I decided just after watching ESPN and seeing them talk about, which NFL teams are going to do this or going to do that in the 2013 season, I figured I'd do a 3-part series. Part 1, this special, 2013 Falloff Teams, where I discuss the teams that were good in 2012 that have the highest probability of taking a step back in 2013. I'll do the next special will be on what teams I think will be sleepers and surprise people next year in a good way, and then I'll pick my conference champions for the 2013 season. If you look at all the teams, let's start with the AFC in particular, because the AFC was not very deep this year. It really wasn't. You had 3 really good teams for the regular season, a bunch of average teams the rest of the way, and a couple teams were just horrible. And you had 2-14 teams. That says enough. And each division featured a team that lost at least 10 games. That's not a very good statistic. If I had to pick one team from the AFC who performed good in 2012 that will take a step back in 2013, you could look at several teams. You could look at the Patriots, who, they're still young on defense. Tom Brady's getting older. If you get physical with their receivers, the line of scrimmage, you can disrupt their timing. You look at, teams like Houston. Are they mentally tough enough to take that next step and go to a Super Bowl? Or an AFC Championship game, for that matter? What about Indianapolis and Andrew Luck? What does the future hold for them? Speaking of Indianapolis, the team that I'm picking out of for my AFC fall-off team is the team that plays in the city that used to call the Colts its team. That'd be Baltimore. So my AFC 2013 fall-off team is the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm not picking them to really take a huge step back and to, more or less not amount to anything next year. I'm picking them as a team, look at what's going to happen this offseason, okay? You won the Super Bowl. Good for you. Now, you have to realize something. You had a defense in the regular season that, was not that good. You had an offense that still at times can sputter. We don't know how Joe Flacco is going to handle success. There are a lot of quarterbacks that won that ring, that elusive ring, and they just couldn't handle success the rest of their careers. Or just, didn't amount to anything and had one good playoff run and that proved to be it for them. Like, Trent Dilfer. I mean, it's kind of bad to put. I'm not putting Joe Flacco in Trent Dilfer's category. I'm just saying the storylines are similar. Underperformed the first few years in the league, finally caught fire in a postseason, ended up winning a Super Bowl. Ironically enough, both with the Ravens. I mean, once Steve Young won his ring, he had a couple good seasons afterwards, but never like what he had that year or the year before. But the biggest question mark for the Ravens is the fact that the last 10 years on that defense, you could basically say that the defense is led by 2 guys, safety Ed Reed and linebacker Ray Lewis. And the fact of the matter is, Joe Flacco is more likely going to get the franchise tag slapped on him, which means Ed Reed, they won't be able to franchise any other player. And they're not going to sign a 34-year-old safety, Ed Reed, to a long-term deal. It's one of those things that, well, if Flacco does get the contract, there's a very, very good chance that Ed Reed will get franchised and be around another year. But he himself said it best, he'll probably see himself playing for another team in 2013. But of course, Ray Lewis is irreplaceable. I don't care who you have to back up Ray Lewis. He's not going to be anywhere near as good as Ray was. You can say if you want about Ray, and some of his, this and that, but can't argue this. He's one of the top 5 inside linebackers in NFL history. You don't just replace that overnight. And the fact that he was the emotional leader and the emotional rock for that football team in the playoffs, that team is really going to miss his leadership more than anything. Like, the 1999 Broncos, they didn't lose anybody on that team from 98 to 99. But once John Elway retired after the 98 season, their 99 team was just terrible. They went from 14-2 the year before to 6-10 the year after Elway retired. So, it has a lot to do with that, And when Gordon Bennett got to the Steelers in their 5th ring, after Bettis retired, Steelers went 8-8 and probably shouldn't have been 8-8. Should have been more like a 7-9 team that year because they weren't very good either. So yeah, picking Baltimore for those reasons. You know, you have a lot of leadership on that team possibly being lost, with Ed Reed and Ray Lewis potentially both being gone, not just Ray anymore. Personally, I think that team's going to lose both. They've already lost Ray, so that's a done deal. But losing Ed Reed is tough because you lose, in my opinion, the greatest free safety in NFL history. A guy who is just such a ball hawk, longest pick six in league history, could single-handedly take over a game. I remember 2010, he missed the first 6 games. So he only played 10 games that year and recorded 8 interceptions. It's pretty damn good because he knows where the ball's going to be every single play. So losing him is a hell of a blow. And I have a strong opinion that the Ravens, they went 10-6. 9-7 is what I see this team doing. Because you can, if there are certain pieces in that team that aren't great leaders and you replace them with other adequate players, the team will perform just fine. You can't replace Ray Lewis and Ed Reed overnight. You can't do it. All right, moving on to the NFC. The NFC was very deep this year. We had 7 teams with at least 10 victories, and half the conference won at least 9 games. It's pretty damn good. The team, though, that I really expect to take a step back next year, and this is going to surprise a lot of you, it's Green Bay. Because the division's pretty damn good around them. I mean, I don't expect Detroit to go into the tank and go 4-12 like they did last year. I mean, that was a fluke for them. I mean, so you can argue that 10-6 was possibly a fluke. You know, think of it this way. The Lions have a very talented roster. They're a very good team. The Bears just hired an offensive coach, and they still got a great defense. Very good team. The Vikings, without any real help on the offense, besides their offensive line, which still played average in 2012, Adrian Peterson ran for the second most yards in league history, and the Vikings won 10 games. They're a good team with a decent defense. Green Bay's got competition at division. Let's keep in mind that if Green Bay loses 1 or 2 games, they don't win the division. In fact, they don't even go to the playoffs. So they were barely. I know you could say they were lucky to get. They won they clinched the division with a few weeks remaining, but still, that division came down to the wire. It did. Chicago had a chance late. Minnie had a chance late. Green Bay doesn't win a couple of the key games. They don't go. Now here's why I'm picking Green Bay to fall apart. Because even when their offensive linemen were all healthy, Brian Bulaga, guys like that, that offensive line was still in shambles. And, Rodgers may be as quick as he is, but, if a pass rusher, gets a free lane to go and hit the quarterback, Rodgers can't just move him around, can't just, throw him down like Big Ben can, Roethlisberger can, and just throw a pass down the field. He can't do it. I mean, he's going to get hit. He may be fast, but, the linebackers are big, and they're just going to knock him right to the ground. And defensively, the defense that Green Bay has is just absolutely horrible. You can make an argument that the game against the Vikings this year in the playoffs with Joe Webb at quarterback should have been a shutout, and they still got up 10 points. Then they went to San Francisco and played a team with a young quarterback in his first playoff game. In fact, it was only his 7th or 8th start in his whole career, Colin Kaepernick. A team that, other than Randy Moss, Vernon Davis, and Frank Gore, and Michael Crabtree, and none of those guys are really that spectacular except for Vernon Davis at this point in their careers. They just got torched by the arm and the legs of Kaepernick. That defense just got lit the hell up by San Francisco's offense. You just can't say it's a fluke thing. Teams are going to watch that. They're going to watch and see what San Francisco did. I mean, even though San Francisco ran a lot of plays with Kaepernick that a lot of quarterbacks can't run, they're also going to take a lot of what Green Bay gave up through the air. Because let's not forget, Kaepernick threw for 263 yards and a couple of touchdowns. You know, he threw the ball pretty damn good that day. I mean, even look what happened in Minnesota in the regular season finale. They win that game, they get a first-round bye. They would have played the Niners in Green Bay again, like the season opener, and possibly had a chance at really getting revenge. What happens? Minnesota, you know, hangs tough with them. They don't go away. They kind of limit Aaron Rodgers late in the game. Drive down, kick a field goal. You know why? Because the Packers' defense was soft. And the Packers' defense will be soft next year. Yeah, you've got high-profile players like Charles Woodson. You know, the possible rookie, one of the contenders for Rookie of the Year this past year, Casey Hayward. You know, whether it be future Hall of Fame defensive back Charles Woodson, or whether it be defensive tackle B.J. Raji. You've got names on this defense. You don't have production out of them. I mean, Clay Matthews is probably the best guy in that defense. Is the only really that guy this year that got results on a consistent basis. Everybody else was so inconsistent. Now, Green Bay won 11 games this year. I mean, that's not bad. It's not. They played good at times, but there are times when, you know, they just didn't play very well at all. I mean, yeah, they moved to 11th in pass defense, up from having the worst pass defense in league history last year. But their interception total dropped. They gave up a lot of touchdown passes. I mean, I know Aaron Rodgers played well, but the problem with Aaron Rodgers having to play the way he did, he can't continue to go out there and throw 3 touchdown games every single week. No quarterback can do that week in and week out. I mean, not even Tom Brady, who had the 50 touchdowns in 2007, like 34 of those were in the first half of the year, because in the second half he cooled off big time. All that I'm going to say is that if Aaron Rodgers seriously needs to go out there, complete like 80% of his passes for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns just for Green Bay to contend with opponents, they're going to be in trouble in games when either A, he doesn't play, or B, doesn't play well. Because if he's not at the top of this game and he's missing some throws, teams will just go right down the field in that defense. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed that part 1 of my NFL team predictors for next year. I just did the teams that I think will take the biggest step back, one in each conference. Coming up next, one team in each conference that might surprise you. Stay tuned.